Hello everybody and welcome back, and right now I will show you the blind SQL injection. So you also have it under the dev vulnerable web application directory, so you just log in right here where we were in the previous tutorials and just go onto the SQL injection blind. Now you will see the same output, or not the same output, it is basically the same version as the visible SQL injection. Just right here, if you type the apostrophe, for example, it won't print out the error, which makes it blind. So we do not really know if it is vulnerable or not at all. As we can see in the previous one, once we typed the apostrophe and submitted, it gave us the error in SQL syntax. But if you type right here, if you type 2 and then 2 apostrophes, you can see that it actually gave the output for the second user, which basically means that injecting is possible. It didn't give us an error about syntax or anything, it just gave us the output for the second user. Now, what does this mean? It basically means if we type here the same command as we used in the previous one, so if we, for example, use the user under the ID of 1, and then we type here and 1 equals 1, and we submit that, we will get the user under ID 1. But if we type 1 and 1 equals 2, wait, I forgot the apostrophe, it won't give us any output. Now, we can conclude from this that the correct statement will give us output, while the wrong statement or not true statement will not give us any output. So we know that 1 equals 1, and when we type that, we notice that we got the output for the user under the ID number 1, and when we type the 1 equals 2, we got nothing as the output, which means that the statement is not correct. So we can conclude that we can only know if answer is correct or not. So all our queries that we will be using from now on need to be constructed so that you receive a yes or no answer. Now, what does that mean? That means that the only way that we can, for example, do the first step, which is discovering the name of the database, is by brute forcing every character. Now, if you type here, since we already know the name of our database, we did it in the previous oops, pardon me. What am I doing right here? Wait, was I all the time on the normal SQL? Let me just check it right here. So we get that right here. And then if we try this one, we get no output. But what about this one? We should get something. Oh yes, it's right here. So you can see that the SQL, let me just go to the blind one. You can see, let's just type once again, and 1 equals 2. You can see the SQL query in the link itself. That means that, first of all, this SQL query is sent with the GET request, and second of all, we can see that some of the characters of our query are encoded. For example, this %3d is encoded. Well, basically that is the only thing that's encoded, but it doesn't matter. What I was saying is that you basically need to brute force every character in order to find out for example, the first step, which is the name of the database. And as I said, if we type here and database function, which gives the name of the database, as we saw in the previous video, and we type here dvwa. Now, we know that the database name really is dvwa, so this will be a true statement, and we will get the user under the ID 1, since this is a true statement. But if we type here a false statement, So we use the same here, but we misspell one letter, so dvww, and click here on submit. You will notice that we actually don't get any output, which means this is not a true statement. So the first one will give answer since dvwa is correct, and the second one won't print out anything, so it's not correct answer. Now we can carry on with this method in order to find out the further things. So what you would do is basically you would type here the same command right here, and let's say you don't know what the name of the database is, you will just basically type here any letter, so let's say it's D, or let's say it's actually G. And then you go to the burp suite, you turn intercept on, and then you submit this. You will see that we send this via GET request. And what you want to do is basically, as we can see, this is encoded and our letter is G. And here you would send this, what you would do, let us just go and find that packet. Here it is. What you would do is you would send this packet to the intruder, and then from here you would select only the letter, the first letter, and you would compare the result by the difference in the answer of the length. Now, what I said, basically we did this similar kind of thing in the brute forcing attack, where we actually tried to see which response gets different length. So the same method applies right here, and once you discover which letter gives different length of a response, you know that that letter is the first letter of the database name. Now, also what you would need, first you would clear all of this, then you would select only the letter which is here in the link, and then you would brute force that letter with all of the letters from the alphabet. So you would have to create a password list, which is basically only A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and supply it in the payload section right here. Wait, let me open burp suite. In the payload section right here, you would supply that list with all of those letters, and then once it finishes, you will see the different length of a response for the correct letter. Now, once you find first letter, you will do that for the second letter, and for the third letter, and for the fourth letter, and finally you would find out that the DVWA is the correct, basically the correct name for the database. And then you would proceed on with the tables, and then the columns, and then the user, and all of that stuff that we covered previously. So that's why this would take a lot longer than the previous video, so I will not be doing it. There's no really point in sitting here 2 hours just to do the same thing as in the previous video. So basically it is the method where you brute force every letter and then you find out the correct name. The principle and the commands are all the same as in the previous video. So that's about it for the blind SQL injection. We won't be really doing it since there's no time to waste. We need to cover more things, such as the SQL map. Now, what is the SQL map? So let me just close all of the things. Wait, I did not want to save it. So let me just click here on X and click here No. So what SQL map is it is basically the program or the tool that comes pre-installed in Kali Linux, and it is used since it automates the process of SQL injections. So all of the stuff that we did manually in the previous lesson and the lesson before that, we can do automatically by this tool. That's why it's easy to use, and you basically don't need to know anything about the SQL language or any type of queries in order to do this. You only need to provide the link, the level of inspection, the risk, and some other options, and it will run on its own. So as I said, it comes pre-installed in the Kali Linux, so just type here SQL map and it will print out your available options. Or wait, it will print out errors, so in order to see our options, just type here --help, and right now we see our available options. So let us scroll up a little bit. What we have here is the verbosity level, then the -u for the URL, so you will always need to specify this. Then what we have is Google Dork, checktor, proxy, so you can set proxy, cookie equals cookie, so you can basically even set the cookie, the data, DBMS, so you can check out all of these options. We won't be covering in the detail since we covered the harder part, which is the manual SQL injection. This is only one command, so we will do it on a specific website, or not website, on a specific page on our virtual machine OWASP. So let me just open up Firefox once again. So go onto your OWASP virtual machine, 192.168.1.6, I believe, and go right here on the however you spell this out, however you say this, motilde 2. The proxy server is refusing connections. Well, that could be because I closed burpsuit. That's what happens when you think you don't need something and then you actually do need it once again. So let us just open burpsuit real quick. So click here OK. Then we go here next once it opens up. Let's wait for it. So next, and we wait for this to open. Now, while this is opening, let me just tell you that the SQL map can be used both for SQL injection and blind SQL injection, and it can also find table names and columns, and it can extract usernames and their hashed passwords. Also, it can use different techniques of encoding to bypass some of the defenses such as filtering and IPS. And it also can work with the Metasploit framework, which we didn't cover yet and we will cover in the future tutorials, but it is a good thing to know that it is possible to mix these two. So let us continue onto our virtual machine. So let us reload this page, and where you want to go right here is, I believe it is under the OWASP. Let me just try to find it. User info, it could be SQL, or maybe under the web services, and then the rest SQL injection user account management. Nope, it's not right here. I don't know why I thought it was right here. Let us just find it. What about this? Name, username, password. Okay, so it is this page right here. And let's say, since we know that this is vulnerable to the SQL, since it is under the user info SQL, we can just basically try anything right here. So let's just go on and then view account details. You can see that there is not an account under that username and password, of course, but we got the link. So we want to test this website for the SQL injection, for example. You will just copy the link, then you type here SQL map -u to specify the URL, then apostrophe, so open double apostrophe, then paste the link, close apostrophe, and then what we want to specify is the input that we want to scan. So let's say for this type of scan we want to scan the username input. So you just type here -p, I believe it's -p, let me just enlarge this and see it for myself. So -p test parameters, so testable parameters, we want to test the username parameter, so just type here username. And what we want to do is use also the schema. So we did that in the previous video. I explained what the information schema and all of that is. The p is the specified parameter that we scan. So once you do that, you can also add some of the other options right here if you want to. For example, level of scan, so level of test to perform, default is 1, level of risk, so you can set the risk to be under 3, but I believe it will be more difficult then, not difficult but more detectable then. And here this -- schema, as you can see right here, it says enumerate DBS schema. So if you let this to run, it will take some time, I believe. I don't know if I finished it before, so it will ask you some of the questions. Make sure to read them under when they pop up. So it says right here, it looks like the backend DBMS is MySQL. Do you want to skip test payload specific for other DBMSs? We want to say yes, since I believe it really is the MySQL. So for the remaining tests, do you want to include all tests for MySQL extended provider level 1 and risk 1 values? We want to click here yes. If you don't want, you can specify the level and risk in the command itself. And basically you can let this run and it will automate the entire process of the SQL injection for you. Once it finishes this, basically I believe it will print out the tables and columns and all of that, and you can basically manually, not manually, but you can automatically with a single number choose an option to check out what it found. But I believe this process takes a little bit longer to finish, so we won't be waiting for this to end. We will cut the tutorial right now, and in the next tutorial we will cover the XML injection. We will do it only in the one tutorial, since it is not that important as the SQL injection and as the cross-site scripting attack that we will do after it. So that's about it for this tutorial. You can wait for this to finish if you want to see what other things it will print out or what other questions it may ask you. And until then, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.